Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to talk to our Superintendent, Jeff Newton, this afternoon. I know everyone in our community, and particularly the parents and students, are interested to know what is going to happen in September. And I'm very pleased that the superintendent has agreed to be with me this afternoon. I did have parents submit a number of questions, but just briefly, again, Jeff, thanks for coming. And I wonder if we could start with how you felt the remote learning went in the final part of the year. I know this was something that was sprung on you with no preparation, and I just wanted your assessment and maybe some lessons learned from that.
Yeah, thank you. And first, I'll thank you very much, Holly, for inviting me, to speak on such, an important topic and something that we are really kind of living through right now and kind of flying the plane as we're building it. But if we backtrack to March, March 13th, I believe was the date when we went out officially. We took the stance, and districts across the state kind of looked at this differently. Some jumped right into online live learning. We didn't do that out of the gate. And the main reason for that was, we had close to 400 families that, did not have devices. And some, there's about 30 to 40 of them that didn't have access to internet even. So if we had jumped right into live remote learning, we would have established a bigger equity and achievement gap, I think. So that was a concern to us. And parents were trying to figure out, work schedules with now having their kids at home. So we took a slower approach, utilizing continued educational opportunities and not jumping into remote learning right out of the gate. That gradually we grew into some of that and gave it as an option for teachers to utilize as we moved into late April and in May and finish out the school year. So many did, some still didn't, but we tried to keep it an option in support of families. Now, in moving into this coming year, if we go remote, everybody will be prepared and ready to jump into live lessons and live learning. So that is continuing education opportunities are gone. We did that. We will now be live learning if we end up having to go remote, for next year.
So with the continuing education opportunities, that would be families could pick up discrete bundles of work to prepare at home with teacher guidance how did that work?
Exactly. Yeah. Teachers were providing guidance. So every Thursday, we would release information for the week that students and families had to engage in. They would have times for teachers to engage with students, whether it be through phone calls or video chats or whatever it might, email. So they had office hours, we called them, for teachers and students to go over work and correspond as it pertains to assignments. So kids worked on those on a daily basis. We used different platforms. Microsoft, Google. We had Seesaw running for our elementary students, other platforms. So we utilized that format, and all that work was due, the following week, and then we'd start the process to cycle over again.
And obviously, the ability to do any of this with the very different ages and grade levels must have presented its own challenges.
It did, absolutely. But I tell you, it pushed us forward in our thinking, pushed our teaching staff forward in their use of technology. Because that was the other piece. We had a number of teachers, before this hit back in March, some teachers were very adept at utilizing technology in their classrooms, and some were not so adept. So this really pushed individuals to make sure that this was ingrained in their work moving forward. And got a lot of feedback at the end of last year from teachers saying, "Wow, this was actually really good for me as professional learning on the fly, because now I have a much better understanding in the usage of technology in my classrooms." And the other piece too, we did not have, devices. We were not a one-to-one device school. We were working towards that. That was part of our 5-year plan. And last year, we were in year 3. We're going into year 4. So by the end of year 5, we had plans to have a device in every child's hand. Well, as you know, through the budget process, we have now done that. So come the beginning of the school year, we're going to be waiting for that order of all the student devices to come in. We'll be giving kids laptops and our younger population our K-2 iPads.
Yes, and I think people may be surprised. We think of East Lyme as an affluent community, but you said up to 400 children and families did not have access to this. And this increasingly, for me, has been a real concern that as we face the question of equity, the whole digital divide we are so reliant now on the technology, and well, not just for school children but for seniors as well. You can't interact with many government departments without having that technology. And I think this has driven home the importance of having that available and accessible, because it is such an important part of life for everyone, whether you're in kindergarten or whether you're 80. So I was pleased to see that capital improvement piece to allow for the technology upgrades and the devices was maintained in the budget, because I think it's going to be increasingly important going forward. And this has just driven it home. So
Yeah, we were very thankful to the Board of Finance, for working with the Board of Education, and our administrative team on supporting that venture. And, just one last piece, we utilized surveys out to parents, to students, and to staff, through that process from March until the end of the year, kind of trying to gauge, okay, how is it going? Should we try and apply more? Should we apply less? Is it too much for you? So, the feedback was, as you can imagine, it was kind of all over the place. But, the majority of parents, that we were seeing were showing that, it was working for them and working for their families.
okay. So now we're in that you received guidance from the state. I think there were two separate documents. You were told that you needed to prepare a sort of threefold plan. Everybody in school, a hybrid plan, which was a combination of in-school and remote learning, and then a totally, we're not in school, this is going to be all virtual learning. So your deadline is July 24th. How's that going?
So right when we heard this from the state, this plan needed to be developed, and quickly saw the timeline, we had already pre-formulated committees. So we have 5 committees running across the district. We had our communications committee. We have our social and emotional learning committee. We have a operations committee, a logistics committee, and an instructional curriculum pathways committee. So all of those 5 committees comprise of about 160 staff members across the district. We also have a board member, parent, that are part of this work that was moving forward. So those committees have done a great deal, and they have submitted, as of this morning at 8 a.m., they have submitted what they had created in response to what the requirements were through the state. You mentioned the state had 2 documents. They had their 50-page guidelines and requirements, and then they had a specific 8-page. These are all the exact requirements you need to have done. So that's what the 5 subcommittees worked on, making sure we responded to all of those requirements. So we are sifting through all of that. We started this morning. That's all we've done all day today, and we'll do into this afternoon and evening, working on putting that together across those, the plan itself, getting ready to submit an entire document to the State Department, and then also create a user-friendly parent guide, because the parents aren't going to read a 50-page, or 75-page document that we submit. We have to call out what are the most important things for parents to know.
All right. So what do you, and I want to leave time to get to the questions that were submitted by parents, but what for you, you're looking at those 5 committees working on it, what for you has been the biggest challenge?
The logistics side of things, Holly, has been the biggest, because especially it's one thing to stay 100% in-house, which is what the governor has said we will start with. We can work through the PPE requirements with that, wearing of masks, social distancing. We can do those components. When we start to get into a hybrid model, it becomes very challenging of only having half of our students on site, half our students home. So we're trying to work the scheduling of that and trying to do it in a regional manner too. So we're all districts are kind of in Eastern Connecticut are on the same page with how we approach a schedule. So that is being worked through right now as to what's going to best suit our families who have working parents at home. So if their students can only come to school, let's say Monday they come to school, Tuesday they're home, Wednesday they come to school, Thursday, that sort of thing. And again, I'm not saying that's what our plan is, but how are they going to manage that with their home life and their working for working families? So that's been the biggest challenge. We're trying to figure out the best model that's going to support a hybrid approach and that's regionally based.
Right. I'm interested to hear you talk about the need to look at things regionally. How much help are you getting from the RESCs? Are they, we obviously we have Learn in our area, because I would hope that would be a resource you could use.
Yeah, Learn has been great. Every Thursday I have a regional meeting for an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting with area superintendents that are part of our organization. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're working through these components, and Learn has been a great central hub to help guide us and support us, taking notes, giving suggestions, offering different methods of things, and also bringing in what the other rests across the state, are doing and what other districts are doing as well. Our CAPS organization, our Connecticut Superintendent's organization that I'm part of, also has been good. Fran Rabinowitz, the executive director, has been helpful. Great connection, right connection with Miguel Cardona, our Commissioner of Education. So it's been good to have her as part of these meetings as well.
So obviously one of the challenges if you're a parent of a special needs student is how that's going to be addressed, because I can imagine that was a real concern, both when you had to go to that remote learning and going forward, because those are very specific requirements and needs that those children and families have.
Yes, and we've are one of the few districts we found across the state that have one of the largest populations of on-site ESY, extended school year services, this summer. So we have over 100 students that are coming in to the middle school and the Lady Haynes and utilizing, direct services with staff members on site. It's going very well. The PPE requirements, mask wearing is working. Students are taking mask breaks, et cetera. So that was a big piece for parents of students who have, that greater need for a connection with their teacher and that direct core instruction for supports. So there's minimal regression. So we're thankful that we've been able to do that. We've received some positive feedback, from parents, and we, plan to continue that, moving into the year.
Well, that's great to hear, because I know that population does have very specific needs and requirements that you're able to fulfill them. So I said I wanted to be able to leave some time for questions from parents, and then at the end I'd like you to wrap up and some things that you would like to be seeing from the state. But I had a question that had a number of a parent who had a number of questions about the sort of health requirements. So a child, students come into school. There was a question about temperature checks. How are you going to keep track of people who are students or staff who may have either been exposed or may be suffering from COVID-19? What's the protocol going forward?
So our logistics committee has mapped out, all of our health protocols, and procedures. Let's start, with temperature checks, and we're following a lot of what we've already done for our extended school year ESY program this summer. So, we are not taking temperatures of students at the door. That's really, impossible to do. Would take a massive amount of time as you think about, 1,000 high school students walking in all at the same time. So we're asking, parents, just as we would in any given year, to be monitoring your child at home. If your child is sick or presents with a fever of over 100.4, that's based off of the CDC guidelines, anything over 100.4, they need to keep their child at home. And you need to keep them home for beyond, the 24-hour window until, a fever has broke. So we're asking, for that to be in place. As it pertains to other requirements, mask wearing, for instance, is a big one. I've had a lot of questions about that one. We are, per the governor's order, requiring students to wear masks during the school day, but we will be implementing mask breaks. We're incorporating those into the scheduling, especially in the fall and the spring. A lot of time, as much time outside. So mask break, taking students outside, recess time as well. That will be helpful too for kids to get some fresh air and not running around necessarily with their mask on, socially distancing. So the piece, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say, a family says, oh, so-and-so has tested positive. Is there a requirement that they notify you? How is this going to work?
Yeah, exactly. They would be notifying our office, and we would take immediate action. First order of business is to contact the Department of Health and Ledgely Health District. Second order of business is to let the Connecticut State Department of Education know that we have a positive test case. And obviously, we would want to let our parent community know, especially within that school where we might have had, a positive case. The plan as of right now is to not, close the school down or the district to close the school down for, 14 days, for instance. What other states have done is they've closed their school when they've had a positive case for 3 to 4 days. And this would all be based on, recommendations from the Department of Health. They would be right alongside us making these determinations. 3 to 4 days, come in and do a deep cleaning of the entire building. Make sure that safety protocols and pieces are back in place, and then we would re-enter students from there.
All right, and I know with contact tracing, you'd be working hand in hand with Ledge Light. If you have a student or a teacher who tests positive, that they would work with you in identifying someone those people with whom they've been in contact.
Exactly. All of our attendance protocols remain imperative, making sure we know who's on site, right down to our staff, signing in like this summer, all of our protocols, anybody who walks in the building signs in. So we sign in. I sign in myself into the building and I sign out at the end of the day. So we have a written log of everybody that's been, on site so we can go back to contract tracing as necessary.
Now, do you have protocols for staff in terms of, I'm just talking at the museum, we do temperature checks of staff and then everybody has to certify, yes, I have no symptoms. Do you have anything in place for your staff?
We are not,
that?
at this point, we're not requiring temperature checks of staff, but found the same premise that if you're sick or if you're feeling ill, you need to stay home. But we will not have, mandatory temperature checks at this point. I mean, again, requirements are changing weekly coming from the state and further guidance. So if we find a new requirement that comes down, we will follow that. But as of right now, working with the Department of Health and the CDC guidelines, we're not planning on taking temperatures of staff members, on site.
Okay, thank you. And the final question from this parent, if a student who no longer feels safe in school, for whatever underlying health issues or fragile, susceptible parents at home, is distance learning an option? Or if there is in-school learning, you're going to be learning in school?
Yeah, the state plan outlines a temporary option for parents to keep their students at home. We have a survey out right now, which closes a little later this week, to gauge how many parents might be interested in doing that, keeping their children at home. And that part of the work that we're doing all this week is building the plan. Okay, how are we going to now educate those students for families who are keeping their kids or decide that it's safe to keep their child at home. We can't just simply say, okay, well, go follow the homeschool guidelines per the state. That's not what we're going to do. We're here to support our families and support our students, and we'll do our best to do that. We're just trying to map out how that's going to work.
And obviously that could change over the course of the year depending on how things play out.
You could change next week, Holly, too. That's the hard part of this. I find it such a struggle because we go and we tell parents one thing, and I'm so cautious because then it changes a week later, and some new requirement comes out based off of transmissions. And obviously, we don't know. We watch what's happening around us in the Northeast. The whole other, the rest of the country is kind of exploding in cases. What that means for us, with another 6 weeks left before the school year starts, is really yet to be seen.
Yes. All right. So another parent was talking about the whole cleaning protocol. How are we going to keep the schools clean? How is sanitizing going to be done? Again, just wearing my museum hat, my staff must spend at least half their time now on cleaning and making sure everything's sanitized, those high touch areas. How is this going to play out in the schools?
Yeah, and our custodial staff is already, engaged in that, where, during specific periods of the day, they're coming around, they're wiping down doorknobs, they're wiping down surfaces wherever they can, all those touch areas. We had planned for next year to not be moving forward with the hiring of 2 custodial positions. We have since revised that and changed that. We already have them posted. We're going to be hiring. So we have additional custodial support on staff, across the district, to make sure that that's what they're doing. They're going around and they're cleaning as many surfaces, as frequently as possible. That might be, door handles are the biggest ones, desk surfaces, those sorts of things. So that's all.
This parent also had a question about Purell. That at one point, she said, Purell sanitized dispensers in the elementary classrooms, and they were removed because students put their Purell hands in their mouths and were getting dry skin. So is the recommendation going to be actual hand washing in sinks when possible and Purell when necessary? How is that, keeping hands clean going to work, particularly for the younger students?
Yeah, and luckily, through our elementary renovations that took place, couldn't be better timing for those to be done now. We've expanded a lot of bathrooms and we have, more sink space. for kids, to access hand washing. They've been doing it regularly for years past, either before recess, after recess, generally before lunch, after lunch. So we will be encouraging that. Most of our primary classrooms, still have bathrooms, in them. Kindergarten classrooms all have bathrooms right in them. So that hand washing will be encouraged. There is, the use of hand sanitizer. It will be regulated. It will be monitored. We don't want a situation where a young child, attempts to eat it, or, I guess years ago, something of that nature happened prior to my time in East Lyme. So we want to make sure that that's done in a safe and effective manner as well.
And into getting back to the custodians in terms of bathroom cleaning, I know one of the recommendations was to, keep certain bathrooms for certain groups, that whole cohorting idea. Is that envisaged as part of the plan, that you would restrict use to certain groups so you knew who was in there, and to monitor cleaning, and possibly to limit the amount of cleaning that had to take place?
Exactly. I mean, this summer we have closed most of the bathrooms, so we're just directing, staff that are in-house to certain ones. We will be monitoring part of the logistics work, committee's work. They were looking at that, and I haven't gotten that far to see what their final recommendation will be. But do we want to have monitors that are at each bathroom checking, signing kids, in and out of that bathroom space? That's something that they were looking at. So I don't know what their final recommendation will be on that.
Still a lot of moving parts.
We really are.
Yeah.
Again, we're flying, like I mentioned, we're flying the plane while we're trying to build it here. Getting additional requirements that, continue to come down. And look, safety is paramount. It's the most important thing we can do. Such a tough decision, for parents. I'm a parent as well and have my kids in the school system. My wife, we're worried as well. We're going to do our due diligence in prepping to have, kids on site and making sure we're following all those protocols and safety measures.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I think it was a survey in Shelton, and the parents were sort of nervous, and all the kids wanted to get back in school. And I know I was at an event yesterday, and there were some rising seniors, and they are eager to be back in school with their friends, which of course presents its own challenges. So another question, given that delays because of the way the school year ended, how are you ensuring that children entering a grade level are adequately prepared for that grade level? Is there going to be more emphasis on revision? Are you going to recap some of the things that went on just to make sure you've got everybody adequately prepared?
Well, I think our first and foremost priority is the social and emotional learning component. I mean, we've had students now and staff that have been out of buildings come the end of August, for 6 months. That's an extremely long time to, lose structure for a lot of kids, and the stability of, a structured school day. So that's going to be first and foremost. There's also a trauma element with that. We have a lot of families that have been impacted, whether a loved one or a relative has passed away from COVID. So we need to be cognizant of that and support those students. So that's first and foremost, that we spend the first week or two of school really engaging in talking, with students and families and our staff. And we're providing more PD days up front. So we're adjusting the school calendar next year. I haven't pushed this out. I just let parents know that, look for this. We're going to be probably moving the start date from the 26th to the 31st of August for students. So that's an important piece for parents to be aware of. It gives more PD days for staff to prepare for, the arrival of students. So that's the first and foremost work, Holly, as it pertains to, the academic side of things. We'll see how kids come back. Again, a lot of kids, were online engaging with their teacher and moving forward, with the curriculum addressing academic needs. So you've got then the population of students, maybe that didn't, a small population that didn't engage at all. So we have a few students that just didn't pick this up and work with us at all from March until the end of the year. So we got to have to address that as well. So we'll take them singleton by singleton.
Okay, and then you obviously put the appropriate measures in place so that those children who did fall behind, the way you would after any long summer break, are given the resources so they can catch up and perform at a level that's appropriate for their grade level.
Yeah, that's where our tiered approach, our tier 1, 2, and 3 supports, academic supports come into play, which we will enact, pretty quick as we jump into the year.
Yeah. And I think that the final question from this parent was, obviously communication going forward is going to be so important. And how will you ensure that parents are in the loop, that they're, as circumstances may change, that they're active partners and participants in this as we navigate this incredible challenge?
Yeah, so a couple of ways that we have already established that are out there that parents are already utilizing. Number one, it's important, when you're dealing, and I'll call this, it's a pandemic crisis. We have a major issue on our hands, almost like an emergency protocol or emergency operation mode, where we are responding out every week on the same day, Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, and pushing information out to parents. We're doing the same thing on Thursdays at 4 o'clock with staff. So we're pushing information out via email to all staff. So all parents, all staff, across all stakeholders across our school community. We also have a open ELPS reopening email site, email link. So I've had almost, I think around 30 to 35 parents have emailed in questions to us. So yesterday I spent all morning responding to the questions. We put them into a document, and we will release that document when we push it out on Wednesday afternoon. So parents can go to that and they can find their question and other questions, and can see the response to that. Many questions are the same, so we are able to kind of merge some together. But that's working out so far very well for parents. So our website too, we're directing parents to our website. We'll continue to use Infinite Campus, which is our student database, to message out any new policies or procedures, as policies will be adjusted as well in the coming weeks. So we will be pushing all that information out, but we are using a standard weekly communication out to parents, so they always know that's the day to look for information, so it's not all over the place.
Right. Well, I think that predictability is very important. So just to, as I say, being aware of the time and not wanting to take too much of your time, because you've got to get this document ready for the end of the week. I know one of the things they've stressed, particularly with the lower grade levels, is that idea of the cohorting, keeping a group together. Is that something you see as part of the plan going forward?
Absolutely. That's one of the requirements that's part of the state plan. Much easier to do at the elementary level, and great for us at the middle school level because of our Kiva setup. A lot of middle schools don't have that setup. We do, so it makes it easier. So we can cohort within the Kiva, which is great. High school, the language in the state plan is what's feasible. So high school is going to be very challenging, obviously, because kids are traveling around. We will do our best. Lunch, for instance, we're not planning, obviously, to have 1,000 kids having lunch at the same time like we've done every other year. So that's where some of that cohorting work will come into play, where we're not doing things of that nature. But it's just at the high school, we're going to do what is feasible and what's the safest that we can put in place.
And I know, obviously, a concern for you, particularly in years where municipal budgets and indeed state budgets are under such stress, the increased costs that this inflicts on the school system, and how we address that. I know there have been some federal funds that the state has directed to the schools. I mean, ideally, one, do you have a number that you think you're going to have to find? And two, what would you like to see both from the state and, ideally the federal government to help cover the costs that are obviously much greater than you had anticipated?
Well, we have the CARES Act, which is providing East Line about $171,000. So we already have that earmarked, really to kind of additional supports for special education students, staffing that's required. But those dollars get eaten up real quick. One teacher roughly $60,000-$70,000. So also with FEMA, we're working with the town of East Lyme. We are collecting everything all of our costs associated with this pandemic. For instance, buying and purchasing of masks and PPE equipment. We are keeping a running tally. We're submitting that into the town, and the town and the district submit to FEMA for reimbursement. So we're hoping to get money from there. Really, if the state, if they can continue to help support those costs and associated dollars for staffing, like I mentioned, having to hire the 2 custodians, it's tough to quantify a number right now until we see what aspect of the plan we're going to put in place. Bus monitors, for instance, we might need some bus monitors. We're planning on running all of our buses, but really, one of the recommendations is to have bus monitors. There's a cost associated with that. So we're planning them, as of right now for most buses. But it all adds up. Ali, as we know, and I don't have an exact number of what it's going to look like. We will know in the coming weeks, and we'll be working with the Board of Finance, working with the Board of Education, obviously, on what those costs might look like. And I know every district across the state, is doing the same thing.
Exactly. And just quickly, it occurred to me, so when a child comes to school, he or she will be expected to have a mask? Is the school, so how is that going to work? And obviously, with regard to staff as well.
Yeah, it's a requirement. We need to be clear with parents that is a requirement that staff, and students are wearing masks. If a student comes to school without a mask, we will provide them. Or a staff member comes to school without a mask, we will provide one for them. Could be a rainy day, they get off the bus and drop it in a mud puddle or something. We will provide a mask, for them, sort of thing. So, it's not something where we're here to give them out every day, and it's going to be part of our policies, in attire, really, that students are required to be wearing masks. And I think we're seeing that across our towns, and kids and parents all have them now. So it's an opportunity, also for, maybe we get some designer masks, maybe kids, little competitions. We'll see what we'll try and at least make light of it in a tough situation. So
I've seen some very cool ones ranging from, dinosaurs to scallop shells to you name it. So,
yeah.
And then quickly, again, so I know in our conversations, there have been some frustrations in terms of what's coming from the state. Is there anything else that you would love more guidance on? I know we've shared our desire to know, if we're going to convert to all online, what's going to be the indicator. So anything that you would like to throw out there?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one is really, okay, when do we know, or what is the required number of transmissions across the state or the region, or the area, that dictates now we have to now switch over, because I don't know what that is. I don't know when I make the call to say we're moving to a hybrid model, or we're moving to a remote model. So that in itself is very challenging. We don't know what that's going to look like. It's a little frustrating. I know the state is working so hard, and our commissioner is working so hard, and they're doing the best they can and doing a great job. But the sooner we know as superintendents, it's the easier that we can communicate out with parents. Because what I don't want to have happen is us communicating out a message and then it changes. Because that's what really frustrates people. And it frustrates me as a superintendent, because now I've given a message out to the community and it's wrong, or they think I gave the wrong message, and it's just we have a change from the state. So the more crystal clear they can be, and what the expectations are, I think the better off we are. But the state has worked hard, and we're all working hard to get this right.
I think at the end of the day, the question is, we want people to be safe. We want to maintain a healthy environment, but we also want to create the best possible educational opportunity for all our children. And I think, everyone's in agreement that is best delivered when the bodies are in the classroom with the teacher and you get that true interaction. But I think that, the key is to be flexible and adaptable, and as hard as it is, be ready to turn a 180 if that's indicated. But I want to thank you so much. I know there are a million other questions, but if I want to refer parents, check that Wednesday at 4 email, check the synopsis of the questions asked, and then after July 24th, when you have submitted the plan to the state, how quickly do you hope to have that sort of 8-page summary, a highlight for parents? This is what we've submitted. This is what we hope is going to be the plan.
Yeah, by early August. So what we'll want to do is, once we have our final reopening plan created by this Friday and submitted, in the midst, we will be breaking it down so it's an easier readable version, for parents. We'll want to get that out. We'll obviously have to talk to the Board of Education, first, and then we'll want to get that out to parents. So beginning of August is what we were looking at. But just, please encourage folks to go to our website where we'll be posting things. Look for those, those emails and that correspondence on Wednesdays, and use the email address that I'd sent in a recent parent letter. And you can always call us here or email me directly too. I've taken a lot of parent emails. I usually try and respond to them in the evenings or on the weekends, and try and get feedback and information out as much as possible.
Well, I want to thank you. And finally, did the state give you an idea of how quickly you're going to get yay or nay on, your plan is good? I mean, is it
No, I
Maybe
don't.
I'll ask them that question.
Yeah, that'd be a good question to ask. I'm not sure. I don't think there's a yay or nay requirement. I think it was more or less just submit it and have it on
Know
file.
what you have in mind, so you have a plan going forward.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time today, Jeff, and thank you and all the staff for the time and energy you put in. This has been a challenge for everyone. I know that your heart, your dedication, your hard work are geared toward ensuring that every child in East Lyme has the chance to succeed to his or her full potential, and that the parents feel confident that the school system is looking out for their and their children's best interests. So thank you so much for your time and good
my
luck.
pleasure. Anytime.